All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. Just a little bit of a late start. We had some tech issues yesterday as well. Yesterday, I'm going to say Arlen wasn't my fault today. Yeah, I was a little bit fumbling around there, but why should today be any different than any other? How you doing, sir?
I'm doing just fine. It's been 2 weeks since our last show. We were able to get together a little bit in California, which was nice. But, back to the routine, and it's a crazy time, obviously, in the news.
Yeah, well, always crazy times, and it seems like more and crazier as time goes on. You mentioned we got together in Monterey. Arlen, that was great. Really nice to see you. And Chris from the old radio station days. Wish I could have seen some other folks, but I know at least one person just won't even break bread with me. He's so infuriated with me, and I find that very unfortunate. I think we should try to meet with people, even if we don't agree with them.
Does his name begin with an F and has 4 letters?
Yes, it isn't Phil with the 2 L's. No.
No. You can't please everybody, Hal. And some people are a little bit less, easier to please than others.
Well, you know what's funny about that, Arlen, is and I guess this is just me personally, but I love to talk to people who don't agree with me. I want to hear other people's views. I want to get dissenting perspectives. I feel like it helps me understand myself a little bit better and others. And also, I hope to learn from other people. So it's quite disappointing to me if somebody says, well, I'm just not going to listen to you. I'm not going to talk. I won't meet with you because you're too, anti-democratic party, I guess, is the criticism.
Well, some people just don't have any tolerance. Others are a little bit nicer about it. But as far as your show goes, you want all sides, you want all ideas. And that's what your show is all about, getting, these kind of issues in public and talking about them and trying to solve them. And, some people just aren't interested.
I think that's exactly right, what you just said. And I find that so, again, disappointing for me for a lot of different reasons. And we don't need to get into all of them. But yeah, I would, I want this to be a dialogue. I've always said that. In fact, today's a dialogue too, 240-242-5646. So often I find, and this may be a reason this program hasn't done quite as well as I had frankly thought it would. There isn't as much interest in hearing and debating and discussing and learning from each other as it is simply getting your own views reinforced day after day, hour after hour. And that, explains Fox News' popularity for sure. And frankly, MSNBC's as well.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt about it that we're splitting off. There's one side and people get their news from, those kind of people that agree with them, and then you got the other side, and it's hard to get them together. So, and especially now with Trump in charge, people aren't sure what's going on. It's kind of mind-boggling.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to say it's Trump's fault that there's more, I guess, partisanship than ever. I don't know that I can. There are things I'll lay at his door, but that isn't one of them. Let's play this clip. Now, one of the things before we get there, before I left for my week off last week, one of the blessings in quotation marks that I had found from the Trump administration was I didn't have to do my daily opening where I talk about the horrors in Gaza, the crimes committed by the Israeli government with the full backing of the U.S. Administration, the president. Trump, despite his rhetoric, his uber-Zionist rhetoric, apparently had managed through his messenger boy, Steve Witkoff, to broker a ceasefire. And the killing, while still continuing, was at a far, far, far lesser scale in Gaza, although Israel's actions in the West Bank confirm that they're committing genocide against the Palestinian people. Since I left a little over a week ago, Israel began its bombing in an intensified fashion with the full backing of the Trump administration. I would be a complete hypocrite if after, excoriating Harris Biden day after day for over a year because they were helping Israel exterminate the Palestinian people. I'd be the worst kind of hypocrite if I didn't point out that now the Trump administration is doing the same thing. Let's just play this video so people can get a sense of just how awful it is for the people of Gaza.
There seems to be not much left to destroy, yet Israeli strikes and shelling continue to pound down across Gaza. In Gaza City, people pick through the destruction, searching for bodies. A haunting reminder of what people here most feared, a return to war, trauma and misery.
I'm afraid for my children, and when I sleep and wake up, I look at my children and I think, will they be here tomorrow? I'm afraid for my husband as well. I try to make sure we stay together always. I hope this nightmare goes away and the war ends so we can return to our lives.
It's not just buildings being struck. Scattered belongings in bags make up the remnants of a makeshift displaced persons camp in Khan Yunis. The UN says relentless shelling displaced 124,000 people within a few days. Palestinians have nowhere to go. Some have reported being attacked by drones, quadcopters and missiles as they fled their makeshift homes. Hospitals have also become scenes of chaos for different reasons. In Al-Auda hospital near Nusayrat refugee camp in the central area, people flood in searching for their loved ones. This after the Israeli army attacked tents housing displaced Palestinians sheltering in a school in Nusayrat refugee camp. In Nasser hospital in Khan Yunis, this surgical center, the largest in southern Gaza, was hit on Sunday night just days after the facility was overwhelmed with casualties after Israel resumed the war.
The men's surgery department was targeted by the Israeli occupation and destroyed entirely with guided missiles. It's as if the Israeli occupation wanted to destroy this system because it is considered the last breath of the Palestinian people.
Those killed while undergoing medical treatment include a 16-year-old boy and Hamas political bureau member, Ismail Barhoum. A Red Cross building was also hit.
All of this is a result of a collapsed ceasefire deal. While countries scramble to get it back on track, people in Gaza are left in limbo, once again collecting and mourning those killed as Israel continues to unleash waves of attacks across the Strip. Hind al-Khudri, Al Jazeera, Deir al-Balah, Gaza, Palestine.
Right, Arlen, so absolutely horrific situation there. It could not be worse. I read, I hear the paper, all the time, New York Times, whatever, how awful the Trump administration is. We hear from AOC, we hear from Democrats, this is the worst president ever. And yet there seems very little focus on what I would say is the greatest crime of all, the crime of this administration, the crime of the previous administration, that is genocide, that we are fully behind, fully supporting, causing. Those are our bombs. Those are our bullets that are going into the skulls of children in Palestine. How come this isn't what is generating the kind of outrage that Doge, for example, seems to be generating among some people?
Maybe because it's just been going on so long, people are actually kind of used to it. I mean, Netanyahu and his government are very happy to go in there and clear everybody out so they could do with it what they want. Donald Trump seems to want to make a resort out of it. I don't know if that's serious or not, but but right now, I guess Netanyahu and the Israelis feel they can do whatever they want, and they're not going to get any pushback from the American government. I mean, Trump has always been kind of extra nice to Israel and to Netanyahu, and changing the capital to Jerusalem and other things like that. So, there's just no resistance to the horrible bombing and killing that's going on in Gaza, and that's terrible.
Well, why isn't there resistance from the Democrats? Why isn't there more resistance from supposed liberal elites like the New York Times editorial page? For example, MSNBC, shouldn't they be? I mean, putting aside whether they have any concern whatsoever for the Palestinian people, whether there's any decency or humanity in those organs. If they hate Trump as much as they say they do, this would seem to me be a pretty powerful place where you could go after him.
Well, I think some of the Democrats, AOC and a few others, have talked about it and they're very upset with the way that, things have been going on and not stopped. But right now, there's not going to be any resistance from the Trump administration, and they're the ones that hold all the power right now.
Well, that's true, but we are seeing resistance from some quarters against some actions by Trump. We are seeing AOC. I know you highlighted this at the Big Picture Report. By the way, Arlen Grossman is our guest. This is a Tuesday with Arlen. Don't forget, want more, go to Halitics on Facebook. It's really a great resource, I think, although I'm really trying to struggle hard to keep it, again, a little bit of gentleness there, a little gentility. Arlen, you highlighted AOC and Bernie's tour right now. We've got New York Times articles about ways the Democrats can fight back against Trump. I'm just curious, why do you think, seriously, this is so low on the list when, to me, and maybe, it breaks my heart that more people aren't more upset about this. I don't understand. I've talked to people who are like, well, there are a lot of things that bother me. This bothers me a little, but other things do too. I don't get that. The death toll of Gaza children killed in a week, a conservative estimate, 270 children Israel just killed with our weapons. Why isn't this? Please, if Russia did this, can you imagine if Russia was shooting Ukrainian children in the head?
Yeah, I think a big part of it is the fact that the other side, the Gaza side, has Hamas as its leadership, and they're certainly not a very sympathetic group of people. So, nobody's really excited about, Hamas and their leadership at the moment. If somehow that could change, maybe other things would change. But it really, you're right, though. There's no justification for ignoring any of this. It's awful. It's indefensible. And, we really have to do something about it. But apparently it's not high on the priority list right now. There's so many other things that are going on right now that it's, kind of not near the top.
I just can't understand. I'm just saying, personally, I don't understand how anything. You could say there are lots of other things that are priorities. I guess I would say the health of the planet. I guess I would say the existence of, the biodiversity, which is also on the chopping block. But that's another issue that gets virtually no attention. Nobody's talking about the climate catastrophe, which continues to worsen. So it seems odd to me that the issues, at least that are most foremost in my mind, I can explain why, in my opinion, is because very powerful interests are profiting from the genocide or don't care about it or support it, and very powerful interests are profiting from ecocide. But that doesn't excuse Bernie and AOC from not putting this front and center, in my opinion.
Well, what they're trying to do is get the American people on board to go to fight against Trump, because right now Trump has all the cards. He's in control of foreign policy, domestic policy, everything else, and doesn't seem to want to, give up any of this power. So I think what AOC and Bernie are doing, and I think more and more the American public are starting to fight back and protesting and seeing what's going on, and those who collect Social Security are scared. So there's so many things going on, but Trump doesn't want to give up any of his power, and that's the big thing right now. What are the courts going to do? What are the he's got entire control of Congress, obviously, and so a lot of people realize that we have to do something, but what's going to work, we don't know yet.
All right. Again, this is Halitics. We've got Arlen with us. It's a Tuesday with Arlen. We always greatly appreciate having Arlen on. His insights are unsurpassed.
Thank you.
And you can see the numbers I put up there again. I was happy for, I wouldn't say I was happy, but I was pleased at least for a few weeks and maybe over a month I didn't have to put these up. But over 50,000 identified dead. Probably the numbers are in the hundreds of thousands now. And Trump alone with BB has killed now over 1,500 Gazans, 62 people yesterday, many hundreds of children. I cannot understand how anything else could be front page news. But it isn't. And I talk to people and I'm not able to, understand. That's one thing I can't understand. If you have a thought on this, give us a call, 240-242-5646, 240-242-5646, 5646. Arlen Grossman with us. He's the thought leader, California's thought leader. We're going to go to your website, the Big Picture Report, for a video, Arlen, but I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to quickly just throw in, either with respect to Gaza, or you had mentioned also foreign policy. I wasn't going to talk about Ukraine, Russia, but since we're on the other side of the, the other hemisphere, the Eastern Hemisphere, do you want to just had a quick thought on where we are with Russia and Ukraine?
Yeah, I'll just say there's two big foreign policy issues going on right now, and that's Gaza and Ukraine. And I think Ukraine is taking the top position just because a lot of people are worried about, whose side is Trump really on? Is he starting to lean? Well, he's obviously leaning, but is he going all the way toward Putin's side? And, we're changing our entire focus of our foreign policy. We used to be, wanting to fight back against Russia. Now we seem to allow them to do what they want to do. So then that's not the case with Gaza. Gaza, you're not dealing so much with Russia or China or anything like that. It's just Israel against the Palestinian people.
Well, I think that's true. And I think it's also true, though, that the military industrial complex wants war with Russia, and they also want slaughter in Gaza. Trump is giving them slaughter in Gaza, so they have no reason to complain. Trump is apparently trying to stop the killing in Ukraine, and so they do have reason to complain.
Well, Trump is not doing a good job of stopping the violence in Ukraine because he's conceding to Putin a lot of the things that Putin believes, and so that's a big problem, I think. And a lot of Europe and other countries are worried about can they really count on the United States anymore? Is the nuclear umbrella still there to help them if they need it? So a lot of people are wondering where they, a lot of Europeans are wondering where they have to do it themselves, or, how much can they count on the United States?
Yeah, apparently not very far anymore in this case. So we're talking about ways to resist the oligarchy. And it's interesting to me, resist Trump. Often the resistance is being defined by many, certainly by many Democrats, as resisting Trump. It's interesting, though, that AOC and Bernie have titled their very popular tour "Fighting Oligarchy." So it's a broader enemy, right? They view the enemy as something more than just Trump. It's the oligarchy. It's the small cadre of billionaires and other elites who make the decisions for all of us. Any thoughts? I mean, do you like that? Do you think do you think from what you've heard and seen, that is an effective strategy, Arlen? And is that what they are actually doing, in your opinion?
I think what they're doing is trying to stir up the opposition to Trump, and I think it's working. I think there's a lot of, I'm noticing anyway, a lot more protests, a lot more pushback, a lot more anger in these town halls and all throughout the country. And people are beginning to realize that the Republicans aren't being very helpful to them, and Social Security might be threatened. And I've mentioned to you, LaJoy has resigned from the post office. There was a lot of post office protests over the weekend. I went to one of them in Monterey, and I guess LaJoy didn't want to deal with it anymore, so he's gone. And of course, there's the worry about that Trump wants to privatize the post office, as well as, of course, Social Security, which is a big one. People are really worrying about their Social Security, and with good reason, because they're, Doge is just cutting back on the people that work there, and the services are getting to be very bad. And so, the more and more people get stirred up and understand that they have a lot at stake, they're going to be protesting more. And I think that's what we need to do.
Well, I just looked at this article. I was totally unaware until you mentioned. I appreciate you bringing us the information, Arlen, that Louis DeJoy, the Postmaster General, has resigned. He was, I believe, Trump's first Postmaster General as well. I could be wrong about that. He took the helm in 2020, so he wasn't the first, but he was appointed by Trump. He was, I think, Trump's first appointment as Postmaster General. And he is not happy, as far as we can tell. It's not really clear, but it seems as though the Musk proposal to privatize the post office, as you've described it, didn't actually go over so well with DeJoy, which is odd because I always thought he was a privatizer himself. But apparently he is not quite as eager to simply turn over the delivery of our mail to for-profit institutions. So I give him credit for that.
Yeah, and the people that work for the post office, the letter carriers, all the post office unions, they're very upset. And they went across the whole country over the weekend, and had protests in a lot of places. So, there's definitely people, and, there's a lot of rural people that are worried about losing the post office too, because they've always had good service that nobody else would give to, people far out in rural places. So, people like the services of the post office. They don't want to lose them.
Yeah, this is the kind of institution that obviously should be run by the state. That it's fine if you want to have competition from UPS or FedEx or what have you, but it's clear that one government service, one essential service is the delivery of mail, the delivery of information by mail. And it's interesting that it's become less important maybe in many ways because of email, but not in any way has it been relegated to irrelevancy. All right, let's get this video in, Arlen. This is from the Big Picture Report. Well, actually, it's from AOC, but Arlen linked to it at thebigpicturereport.com. I'm going to just take a few snippets from this speech that she's out on tour with Bernie to record crowds. By the way, crowds. Here we go.
I believe that our elected officials should take on abuses of corporate greed everywhere they find it. Get big money out of politics. That is how we make clear that our country is not for sale. And Arizona, that is why I don't and never will take money from industry lobbyists or corporations.
All right, so Arlen, that section there, I just clipped that out. Got a lot of wild applause. Obviously, the people of Tempe, Arizona, and whoever traveled there to see this speech are very upset about how they perceive, and I think, of course, accurately, that big corporations and just simply wealthy people, period, make the decisions, right? They give money to politicians for their reelection campaigns, or they dangle, golden parachutes in front of them, and then the politicians do whatever they're told. AOC makes a compelling case.
Yeah.
But as is always going to be with me, you're going to have to deal with me poking holes in what she's saying. Do you think she's a credible voice for getting big money out of politics, given the fact that she supported Hakeem Jeffries, who is clearly bought and paid for by Wall Street and by the AIPAC lobby, and yet she voted for him? She did not force the vote when Nancy Pelosi was up for House Speaker in 2021, even though Pelosi is clearly bought and paid for by big corporations. So I guess I'm asking you, how credible is AOC when she says this?
I trust her very much. I think, she's got to be realistic and where she is in Congress. She has to go along with the Democrats, or otherwise she's going to be totally isolated. I don't think she really likes Hakeem Jeffries so much. I think, it'd be better if she were in charge, but she's not going to be in charge. But at least if she could get people stirred up and realize what's going on and get the issues out, I think that's a good thing. I mean, they had Bernie and she had like 34,000 people coming to one of their recent rallies. And, like you say, everywhere in the country, there's big crowds for that. And, and there's more and more protests planned in the future. And I think that's absolutely important and necessary.
But if she's not using her popularity, if she's not using her loud megaphone to rally people against the oligarchs, but only against some oligarchs, but not other oligarchs, how is that going to make things better in our country?
Well, I think it's all the oligarchs. She said herself, she doesn't take money from corporations or lobbyists. And, she could be more radical if she wanted to be and hasn't before. But I think she is going to be now because, what's at stake now? There's a lot of, the things that Trump is doing are really scary. And, he's trying to accumulate more and more power. And, Bernie and she both see that they've got to stir up the country and get people on board. And otherwise, Trump is just going to roll over everybody else.
All right. Before we get to the next clip of AOC, I just wanted to point something out, Arlen. And we discussed this earlier, but I just want to reiterate. AOC doesn't mention Israel again in this, in her speech, which is about a half hour. She doesn't mention Gaza. I'm not sure if he mentioned Russia. She might have. I don't think I searched for that term. But given the fact that some, studies, and we don't know all, but polling suggests strongly that a major reason that her choice, her candidate, the one she spoke very, very eloquently, very, very strongly in favor of for president, Kamala Harris, lost because she refused to separate herself from Joe Biden's unwavering support for Israel. Don't you think that it would have made sense, given that it seems clear that at least the Democratic base, many stayed home because Harris made clear she would support Israel no matter what? Wouldn't this have been a good opportunity for AOC to bring up? This is after the bombing had restarted, that Trump was now complicit in the genocide that was, again, ramping up. Why didn't she mention Israel?
Because she doesn't have any power, basically. And, Kamala Harris, the choice was either Kamala Harris or Trump. And obviously AOC is not going to want Trump to win, so she's going to be quiet.
But I'm just talking about the speech just now, the one in Arizona. I'm not talking about, we can debate whether she was right or not to speak in support of Harris. But now she's in Arizona. We know that many Democrats did not support, people who voted for Joe Biden did not vote for Kamala Harris because specifically Harris supported Israel. Why wouldn't AOC bring this issue up when she's in Tempe?
I guess it's probably a lot more important to you than it is to a lot of other people, which is unfortunate, because I agree with you that what's going on in Gaza is horrible. It's criminal, but it doesn't seem to be a big issue right now. So she can't do everything.
Although, Arlen, I just want to reiterate, I want to make this point. At least one credible survey found that Harris lost because she did not break with Biden on Israel. So in other words, you can say it's more important to me than it is to other people, but it appears that this issue actually is very important to many millions of Americans.
It is important, but in the case of Kamala, it was all the issues. She was just going to stick with basically what Joe Biden has done, and she wasn't willing to take on, the administration, wasn't willing to talk about any radical different things that she was going to do, because she was probably advised that, hey, stay where you are, be moderate, and you're going to end up winning the presidency, but which obviously didn't happen. So, it was a poor move. But I think, it's not just Israel. In other words, Kamala was on Biden's side on all the issues. And I think that hurt her the most because she didn't distinguish herself from the old guard.
Okay, Arlen, let's continue into this speech by AOC. And again, 240-242-5646 if you want to join us here. We'd love to hear from you. I'm sure most people listening prefer what Arlen is saying to what I am. So if you do, please call in. If you agree with me, I don't really care. I don't really want to hear from you. But if you agree with Arlen, go ahead. Let me play a little more. This is AOC, and she gets a lot of applause for what she's going to say here. Let me play it.
Tell you that I don't believe in healthcare, labor, and human dignity because I'm an extremist. I believe these things because I was a waitress. Because I scrubbed toilets with my mom to afford school. Because I've worked double shifts to keep the lights on. Because I did lose a parent to cancer as a kid and had to see my mom open the hospital bills a couple days later. Because on my worst day, I know what it feels to feel left behind. And I don't want any of us to live like this anymore. We deserve better, Arizona. We deserve better than this. And let me tell you something. This isn't just about Republicans either. We need a Democratic Party that fights harder for us too.
So it's interesting. This is really, Arlen, where the crowd seems to go wild. They love what she says there about a Democratic Party that fights for them. But I'm not hearing any real challenge to Democratic leadership from her. I don't hear her calling out any, as I mentioned, she doesn't mention Hakeem Jeffries. She doesn't mention her prior support for them. She doesn't mention Kamala, for whom she, was clearly in the tank, even though Harris's campaign was run by corporatists. Don't you think it would be more powerful if she were willing to say, yeah, in the past, I probably was a little too willing to support corporate Democrats. I won't do that in the future. These are the people that we cannot back. These are the people we need to replace.
Well, I think, right now the Democratic Party is pretty low on the priority list and popularity of, all Americans. And the Democratic Party realizes they have to make some changes. What the changes will be, we don't know yet. I'm sure AOC has her ideas, but I think the point she's making is that American people want the things that she wants and Bernie wants. Universal health care, environmental care, all these other things that are very popular but yet never get done because of the corporate power that makes the final decisions. So.
Arlen, let me just apologize to you because I know there was some audio that you were hearing there that kind of messed you up. That was not my fault. It didn't go out to the listener, but I was just trying to cue up the clip there, and I should have muted it, and I didn't do that. So I apologize. People heard a little bit of applause, but I don't think that was a problem for them, but it was obviously an issue for you, and I apologize. Here's the thing. This is supposed to be a fight oligarchy tour. And I think we both can agree that the corporate elites and the billionaire elites exercise tremendous influence over both political parties. So if we're trying to get that big money out of politics so that the government can actually pass laws that will help people, like the health care that she talks about, shouldn't she be saying we need both parties to be reformed? We need not just a new Republican Party, but a new Democratic Party as well.
I think she is kind of saying that. I think you're expecting too much of her help. She's only one person, and she does represent, one wing of the party that, not everybody's a progressive, obviously. So she has to kind of, not make any enemies and make people understand that she's on her, their side, and she wants to help. And then she definitely indicates that I think that the Democratic Party has to change and become more progressive than they've been so far.
All right, let's play a little more because she does identify, because to be fair to AOC, and she did say, it's not just, it's Democrats too, need to do more, although that statement implies that Democrats have done something. But what they've done, yes, they've done things, and those have been bad things, in my opinion, in general, on balance, harmful. But she does call out one Democrat, so let's listen to that.
Here's what that means. That means our communities, each and every one of us, choosing and voting for Democrats and elected officials who know how to stand for the working class.
So I want to tell you why that really irritated me, Arlen. I want to just tell you why that statement so ticked me off. Because over and over, we have voted for Democrats whom we believed, who campaigned as though they stood for the working class, like AOC. But putting her aside, let's assume for the moment she really does stand for the working class. Like John Fetterman. John Fetterman ran as a blue-collar guy, as a working class guy. And he's turned out to be a Republican. All for foreign wars. He hasn't said one thing about unionizing or labor. He pretty much voted for everything Trump's wanted. Barack Obama was campaigned as an outsider. He was someone, he wasn't part of the Washington establishment. He was going to be there with workers. He was a community organizer. And he was a champion of labor community destroying free trade bills and the bailing out the big banks, not the underwater homeowners. So I find that a very, very irritating and aggravating remark by AOC. She's blaming the voters. She's saying, you haven't done enough. You need to do more. It's up to the communities. And then she'll give them a little pat on the back. But can you see why that would aggravate me, that statement?
Well, I don't see any problem with it. I think she's telling you what we should be doing and what the Democratic Party should be. And I agree. I mean, the Democratic Party has to change. And I think the Democratic Party knows that based on the last election. They're just trying to figure out how to do it. But, if they can figure out a way to not get the corporations and the billionaires, so that, she can't, totally ignore them, but she can't, she's trying to find a way to give them less influence and having working people more influence. And by the way, the Democrats have done some things. They've tried to do some things, as far as healthcare and cutting down on pharmaceuticals and prescriptions and, a number of things. Often, they can't do everything because often get blocked by the Republicans, but at least they nibble around the edges trying to help working people, but it's not enough. So, I agree with you there, but I think, AOC wants to see change, and she's doing her best to do it. And she can't do it all by herself, but if she could stir people up and get people, excited about, maybe the future and maybe some changes, then that'll be a good thing.
All right, let me play some more from this clip. As I mentioned, she does call out at least one Democrat for not being on the side of working people.
I want to give you your flowers for a second, because you all have been working overtime to make that happen.
So she's saying, hey, look, you guys have worked really hard to elect good pro-working class Democrats, you Arizonans. So let me continue.
In fact, one thing I love about Arizonans is that you all have shown that if a U.S. Senator isn't fighting hard enough for you, you're not afraid to replace her with one who will.
All right, so there she's referring to Kristen Sinema. And so she does call out clearly a U.S. senator who's a Democrat. Unfortunately, she's calling out a Democratic senator who's not a senator anymore. Sinema's not in office. So there's zero political pushback. Nobody's going to call her office and say, how dare you say this about me? I'm a sitting U.S. senator. I mean, maybe Kristen Sinema will complain. I don't know, but I don't think it matters much to AOC. But she's not actually really going out on a limb there, is she? She's picking on somebody who's not even in office.
Well, yeah, I mean, she's obviously not in favor of Christian cinema, and she, is giving the Arizonans credit for, making better choices. And
but to be fair to cinema, or to be fair to the Arizonans, or not fair to them, they didn't replace cinema. Cinema replaced herself. Cinema said, "I'm not going to run." So I don't think cinema would have won. I think probably Ruben Gallego, who took her seat, would have beaten her. But the fact is, she wasn't voted out. It wasn't a primary challenge.
Well, there wasn't any opportunity for that. She took herself out when she realized she was not going to win, and so other people stepped forward, like Gallegos, and that's the way it should be. And you got to give Arizonans credit for choosing 2 Democrats for senators, and hopefully they'll do what's necessary to make things better for working people.
All right, let me play a little more from this clip.
Win. And that's how you got 2 fantastic senators in Mark Kelly and Ruben Gallego.
All right, so we'll end it right there. 2 fantastic. Those are her words. She goes after the woman who's out of office. She describes the current senators as fantastic. Exactly verbatim her language. As soon as I heard that, of course, my spidey sense, man, I wish I had spidey sense, Arlen. I wish so badly I had spidey sense, but I don't. But whatever sense I have, my BS detector went, started screaming at the top of its lungs. This is from the Phoenix New Times, February 4. Like we got Carrie Lake Gallego. This is the Phoenix newspaper alternative. Kelly and Gallego keep voting along with the GOP. So she singles out as fantastic 2 senators who are doing exactly the opposite of what she's saying we need Democrats to do.
Well, I don't know. When was that written? I don't know.
February 4 of this year.
Okay. Well, I'm hoping that going forward, now that we have a change of administration, then that maybe they'll change their tune.
Arlen, that was 25. I'm sorry. Did I say 24? That was February 4, 25.
Right.
That article was written and published after Trump had been inaugurated. And the complaint, and I'm sorry I said it wrong, the specific complaint was that over and over these 2 are voting to confirm Trump appointees and to vote yes on Trump policies. Well, let me see if I can show you this right up here. This is from the article. Here we go. So these are the senators who have voted most along with Trump. And you can see I mentioned Fetterman. He's at the top. Jeanne Shaheen, Maggie Hassan from New Hampshire, and then Ruben Gallego voting 80% with Trump on important issues. And then after him, Mark Kelly voting 70%. That's to confirm virtually every single one of his appointees, Trump's, and to vote for the Lake and Riley Act, which was really a vile, takes apart our protection for people accused of crimes. So those are the 2 fantastic senators per AOC.
Of course, you got to also understand that was before Trump. Most of the time was before Trump was really elected and started to change his tune. People, they probably thought, hey, if I go along a little bit, that I'll be treated nicer and things won't be as bad. But, Trump has got increasingly worse over time. I don't think these senators would vote the same way right now. At least I hope they wouldn't. But yeah,
you're awfully forgiving. I mean, that's quite extraordinary, Arlen. Come on, that you can't really be serious. These people, they both voted for Rubio for State Department. They both voted for this guy Bessent, who's been basically gave over the Treasury Department to Doge. They voted for this energy guy who's totally for every kind of drilling there is. They voted yes on these people.
of course, they also knew they couldn't change anything. I mean, these nominees were going to get nominated, so I guess they're trying to be nice. I don't know. I agree with you.
But she calls them fantastic, Arlen. She calls them fantastic. Can you say that she's just lying? She's just lying, just like she lied at the Democratic National Convention when she said that Kamala was working tirelessly for a ceasefire, which she wasn't doing.
I think
isn't she just lying to the American people there?
I think she's just giving Arizona credit for not electing Republicans, for, voting the least for Democrats. And I'm sure she'd like them to be more progressive, but, she doesn't have any power really, AOC. So, but she's encouraging them to, become a little more Democratic, a little more progressive, and to, fight back against Trump. At least that's the way I see it.
Well, why would they fight back against Trump if they're called fantastic when they don't fight back against Trump?
Well, she's not going to sit there and criticize the Democrats. That wouldn't help her, and it wouldn't help anybody. She'd like to have different Democrats in there than the ones that they have now, but she doesn't have that power. So she's got to at least encourage them to, go along in that direction, even if it's not as far as they should.
So, Arlen, you said that you think, what was it? You'd like to see AOC ascend. Would you, in the Senate, you want her to take a stronger leadership position, right? Because she's about the most progressive we've got.
Well, one of the things people are talking about is her going in a primary against Schumer and actually, taking his spot. And I don't think she's ruled that out. So I think she realizes that, Schumer is not any help at all to progressive Democrats and needs to be changed, as does Hakeem Jeffries. She's just not going to kind of overly criticize the Democratic Party, or she'll lose her influence. So she's doing it as well as she could do, I think, under these awful circumstances.
I mean, let me push back a little bit. I mean, some have said that the way you get influence is by taking on leadership, by extracting a price, by not giving them what they're asking for unless they give you what you want, by demanding, by extracting concessions every step of the way. And that by not doing that, she and Bernie have very little power, very little influence over the direction of the party.
Well, I like to think that they're improving their image by going across the country and talking about these issues, and maybe getting Democrats more stirred up and, thinking more progressively, and realizing, how badly the Democratic Party has done by just clinging to, the corporate and big money interests. So the Democratic Party is going to have to change. And I think she'll be one of the leaders, I hope, in seeing that happen.
All right, here's Bernie on that very question that I just raised.
Alexandria is extraordinary. I am so impressed by her work in Congress, and she inspires young people all over the country. Would you like to see?
All right, so he obviously, Bernie thinks very highly of AOC. He just said Alexandria's tremendous. And now the questioner is going to ask what I consider to be a perfectly appropriate and, in fact, the begged for question. So let's see if we can get the whole thing in there. I don't want to cut him off. So here, Bernie just said she's extraordinary. Here we go. You can see it. Alexandria is extraordinary. Here we go.
And she inspires young people all over the country.
Would you like to see her join in the Senate?
Right now, we have, as I said, just a whole lot of people in the Congress. Okay, Jonathan, thanks.
Wait, I got one more. This is important.
Well, I asked you, okay, you want to do nonsense, do nonsense.
No.
So was that a nonsense question to say, hey, do you want her to join you in the Senate? Which obviously presumes she would run against Schumer and take his seat if she wins?
I think it's pretty apparent that Bernie likes AOC and would like to see her in there. It's just kind of obvious, I think. That's all right. I mean, one thing I remember too, hearing Bernie talk about is more and more people might think about doing what he does, which is become an independent and yet, still be progressive. Because if the Democratic Party has a bad name and is, thought poorly of by people, maybe it'd be better off if there were more independents. And Bernie might be thinking in those lines.
Well, I agree with that. I mean, I certainly think we need people to run against the Democrats. There's no question. I agree with Bernie there. I think I was talking to a Democratic operative, though, about this, and their take was that Bernie isn't really calling for challenges to sitting Democrats or even campaigns against Democrats, but rather will have independents run sometimes in places where the Democratic Party isn't popular, but not a situation where somebody runs as a Green or as an independent against an established or sitting Democrat. I don't think he was calling for or is calling for AOC to run as an independent against Chuck Schumer. He certainly wasn't doing that. But wasn't that a golden opportunity for for Bernie to say, yeah, Chuck Schumer just gave in on the Trump budget. Schumer had an opportunity to really demand changes, to demand concessions from Trump, to say, we're only going to vote along with this. You need our votes. We can filibuster. We can stop this bill in its tracks unless you promise there's not going to be any cuts to Medicare. There's not going to be any cuts to Medicaid. For example, that's something he could have done, and he didn't do it. So wouldn't Bernie have been well within what I think everyone would think was reason to say, yeah, Schumer really let the American public down. He let the party down. He can't be our leader anymore. So, of course, I would love to see AOC take over.
I think what Bernie doesn't want to do is alienate Democrats. I mean, there's a strong, the Democratic Party has a lot of power and because they are the other party. And I think Bernie would love to see them change. They'd like to see them become more progressive, but he could only do so much, and he doesn't want to alienate, I don't think, all the moderate Democrats out there, because he's going to need moderate Democrats. But I think he would be happy to see AOC and others, if they run as independents, to have the right policies, and then have them be elected.
Well, why not just, I seriously, just like I don't understand the failure to be outraged at the genocide that's happening in real time with our money being used to purchase the weapons of killing. I don't understand this concern for the feelings of Democratic leaders who consistently, invariably put their own self-interests and those of billionaire donors ahead of those of the American people. So who cares? The Tea Parties didn't give a crap about John Boehner's feelings. They didn't care about Kevin McCarthy's feelings when they threw him out. Why should AOC or Bernie care about the feelings of a Chuck Schumer or Hakeem Jeffries, who sell working people out every single day of the week and twice on Sundays?
I think you're looking for radical change, and I don't think that's realistic. I mean, Trump's only been in there a month, and the Democrats are still trying to decide who they want to be and what they want to be, and if they're going to change. Well, they know they have to change, and they have to figure out a way to do that. But
how would you say they should do it? And let me this is a perfect segue to this article that you recommended, Arlen. Although we both agreed it was kind of weak tea. It doesn't really set out a roadmap, but maybe you have in your mind an idea for what Democrats can do or should be doing to try to make things a little better and to maybe regain power for themselves or for progressives in general.
Well, I think what the Democrat... Oh, all right, you want to...
There you go. You can see it.
Yeah, I think for the Democrats, they definitely have to change. I think the best way to have them change would be to have less influence from corporations and billionaires, and they have to figure out how to do that, though, without entirely, giving everything to Trump and giving, they have to convince a lot of people with money and convince a lot of ordinary people that they have to, make changes so that corporations and billionaires are not so powerful. I mean, we only have two parties, so we're limited. I wish we had a multi-party system and a parliamentary system where you had other parties that could make bigger changes, but we don't. So the Democrats have to be careful, but they have to change too.
Well, given what you just said, and I think there's a lot of truth to it, I think probably we live in a two-party system. I like to see the Democrat Party replaced or the Republican Party replaced, but that probably isn't going to happen. But given that, or at least not as we're seeing politics practiced today, but given the fact that the party, well, as you point out, that for them to, it'd be very, very difficult for the Democrats to replace their leadership because of the big money that backs their leaders, and it'd be hard for them to beat Trump because of the big money that backs their leaders. Doesn't that make it even more problematic that these two rock stars, AOC and Bernie, who actually really command a lot of allegiance and people listen to them, regardless of contribution, right? It's not money that got people to go to. Those aren't AstroTurf events. Those are people saying, I want to hear a real formula for change. Wasn't that the opportunity of a lifetime for AOC and Bernie to say, you know what? You can't keep voting for these Democrats. You can't keep voting for people like Mark Kelly and Ruben Gallego. I know it's going to be tough. I know they're going to hate us for saying it. But the fact is that we're in the room. And these people are corrupt. These people are thugs. These people are evil. We have to go in a completely different direction. That was an incredible opportunity, wasn't it? That was completely lost.
Then you're going to divide the Democratic Party into those that are accepting of the Democrats that are there now or opposing the Democrats that are there now. And then you have a problem where you can't unite the Democratic Party. And I think we have to unite Democrats and progressives, together so that they can really get something done. If they don't stick together, if they don't agree on things, then Republicans will take over and do everything, because our system is, such that it's only Democrats and Republicans. And if Republicans all have, are in lockstep, which they are, the Democrats, at least need to be together. So,
well, shouldn't we see it though differently? Instead of playing by that rule, which is Democrats versus Republicans, shouldn't we play it by those who care about poor, struggling, and working people, those who care about the environment, those who care about peace, and those who don't? And then you, instead of giving your speech to Democrats, you give your speech to people who care about the plight of poor, struggling, and working people, which tends to be poor, struggling, and working people, many who voted Republican.
I think she's talking to Republicans also. I mean, look at these town halls. People are getting very upset with their representatives who are Republicans, to the extent that, these town halls are just stopping. The Republicans, aren't able to, talk to their people, because people are very upset about what's going on with, all the things that Elon Musk is doing. So,
let me. This article by Ben Rhodes is interesting. Now, he was a Obama speechwriter. I don't think he gives many solutions, but I found this sentence or paragraph very instructive. The Democrat Party in its current form cannot lead the opposition. The party has lost touch with an electorate it sees as emblematic of what they hate about politics: a polarized culture, overseas commitments, and an economy where it doesn't feel as if being middle class is enough to get by. So I agree with that pretty much, although I'm not sure I like the way he phrased the economy part. But let's go through that and why I'm going to use this to really criticize what AOC said. So
yeah, don't criticize AOC, because she doesn't believe in those things.
I'm criticizing what she said, because I think what she said actually makes it harder, if you're following Rhodes's view, to generate the kind of opposition we need. So one of the aspects of the party that, according to Rhodes, Americans dislike is that it is emblematic of a polarized culture. But when she goes on stage and says you have two fantastic senators, when these are senators who take money from Amazon, these are senators who take money from the Israeli lobby, these are senators, neither of whom, I guess Gallego does support Medicare for all, Kelly doesn't. When these are, by all accounts, pretty much corporatist, centrist Democrat senators, when you say these are fantastic, then you're playing into that polarization, right? You're saying what matters is you're a Democrat. not what matters is you're on the side of working people. So doesn't her speech actually increase polarization rather than reduce it?
Well, I think it would, polarization would happen even worse if she, started bad-mouthing the Democrats that are in there now. She has to get the Democratic Party and all progressives and working people together. And I think that's what she wants to do. She can't do it all at once, but, the Democratic Party, has to change in those ways. And I think she'll, make an effort to do that, as will Bernie, and I hope a lot of other people. And, maybe there'll be a different Democratic Party after a while. Again, it's only been a month or so since Trump's been in office, and turning out to be worse than people ever imagined. So, things could change.
It's a little over a month now, but 2 months actually. But he says also, Rhodes does, that what people hate about the Democratic Party, the polarized culture that it fosters, which she clearly was, in terms of partisanship anyway, however else you want to say polarized, she certainly was fostering a partisan culture, overseas commitments. So again, that would have been an opportunity for her to say, hey, we're spending billions and billions of dollars to help Israel kill Palestinians. We should be spending that money at home. That would have been a perfect opportunity for her to bring that up. According to Rhodes, that's something that people don't like about the the Democratic Party, was its support for that war, as well as for the Ukraine war.
I just think it's going to be
again another opportunity lost, wasn't it?
Well, I don't think she could do everything at one time. She's got to start by uniting Democrats, of all stripes, to get together and stop doing some of the things that she. That this article talks about: overseas commitments, an economy, that's more pro working people. I think that's what the Democrats are going to have to do, and I think they probably will, but it's not going to happen overnight.
Well, she did talk about being, strapped, right? The cash-strapped economy.
Yeah. Well, there's no doubt about it. The economy is very bad for a lot of people, and that's one reason the Democrats lost. And so they have to restructure their beliefs, because obviously it wasn't good enough. So I hope that AOC and Bernie will at least be a big influence on changing the Democratic Party.
All right, Arlen, let's get to some more polarizing, or I don't know, tension-inducing or stress topics or whatever. So here, this is something that, and this will be our last topic, folks. I promise. We're over the hour. I have to run, and I have to let Arlen out of this pressure cooker I'm putting him in. So you were intrigued by the fact that I leased a Tesla when I drove down to Monterey last week. Arlen actually owned 2 Teslas as well. Teslas are getting a lot of hate. You can see here, this one was just totally vandalized. It was utterly destroyed. I understand that people who don't vandalize, but certainly are very quick to condemn Tesla drivers and attack them verbally, not physically. You're okay with this? Is that fair, or maybe you're not? What's your take on all this?
I think people are not against Teslas per se. They're against Elon Musk. He's gone way too far, and he's getting to be unpopular now. And I think, people like me would like to see him lose a lot of money on his Teslas, for his Teslas to lose popularity and people to not buy them. And if he loses many billions of dollars, that would be happy. I'd be happy about it, but not that it's going to make a difference to his lifestyle. But it's not about the Teslas. It's completely about Elon Musk.
Well, what would you say to the argument? Well, a couple things. I mean, do you think the vandalization of privately owned vehicles is in any way effective? I don't know. I'm not asking this to be difficult. I wasn't clear what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, of course I don't support that. I just want people to stop buying the cars and having people who own them, they're going to have a lot of trouble reselling them. You will if you tried to get rid of yours. But no, the violence you can't justify. But I think it's symbolic of how angry people are right now and how upset they are with what Elon Musk is doing.
Yeah, I don't know if I would have trouble selling the car. It never even occurred to me. I love these two cars. They're great cars. It's wonderful. I never have to go to a gas station. I never have to breathe fumes from a gas pump. They're extremely comfortable. They drive beautifully. So I would never, the last thing I would think about is selling. But I'm not so sure it would be so hard. I couldn't believe this when I was in Silicon Valley, not so much in Monterey. That is the most popular mark or brand. Make, I think is the term they use, right? There's make. So the make is Tesla. I think that's the most popular make by far. We saw more Teslas than any other vehicle by a goodly margin. Maybe number 2 was BMW, but way, way fewer BMWs. We just counting in lots, my wife and I would see 8, 10, 12 Teslas, maybe 3, 4, 5 BMWs, and then a smattering of Toyotas, all sorts of other cars. We weren't in the highest rent districts. Maybe there you'd see Mercedes. I don't really know. But even in relatively middle-class housing for Silicon Valley, there were more Teslas than any other car by a lot.
Again, I say it's not Teslas that people are upset about. It's Elon Musk. They want him to be hurt. Yeah, the Teslas, I'm sure, are good cars. And the people that bought them when they did, before Elon Musk got so right-wing, they're happy with their, they can't do anything about it now. They bought the cars. But I think in the future, they're not going to be selling. It's going to be an unpopular car. And that makes me happy, because if it hurts Musk, then I'm happy.
It's really interesting because I'm really thinking about this hard. I know people who didn't buy Teslas because of Musk, and I understand that position. And I always kind of was like, come on, you're cutting your own throat. You're denying yourself the best car out there by a lot. Why would you do that? But I was thinking, I will not buy anything that's made in Israel. I just won't. And so, there's an argument that, yes, you shouldn't purchase from, bad people. And I agree. Musk is doing terrible harm, terrible damage. But then I look at it this way. I'm just giving you my thought process, Arlen. The Tesla, there's problems with it environmentally. It's hardly a panacea. The lithium and all that, the mining, the rare earth is really bad. On the other hand, we're living through the 6th great extinction. This is the Anthropocene age, the age of man, because of our burning fossil fuels. And I don't burn fossil fuels I do, because the electricity that charges the vehicle is probably made in coal-fired and natural gas electrical generating plants. But on the other hand, they could be made by wind energy, solar energy, because there's plenty of energy now made in those ways too. So there's that. So it's not quite as simple, I think, as some would paint it, this question.
I don't think people are bothered by electric vehicles. I mean, there are others. I've got 2 Priuses, that they run electricity, and they're very good cars, I think. It's just Teslas are owned by Elon Musk. So that's the only issue right there. And so I'd like to see people buy electric cars, but of different brands.
Arlen, that is going to be the end of what I have for today's program. Appreciate so much for joining me. Do you have anything you want to throw out there, push back, go after me, ask me some difficult question like the ones I specialize in raking you over the coals with?
I would just like people to look around and see where the protests are, where they can get involved, where they can change the Democratic Party, and, those kind of things. I think more and more we're going to see. I want to see more and more of AOC and Bernie, traveling. And like I say, people are going to have to organize and, fight back against what seems to be pretty much of a fascist government.
Appreciate that so much, Arlen. I echo your words. I will be back tomorrow. I'm not sure what time I will probably be doing something to stand up against the Palestinian genocide. We'll see. But I'll be back on tomorrow. Thanks again, Arlen.
Thank you.